quiet. So
Kathleen,
still working
Bob
it out.
Iger became a billionaire at the beginning of the pandemic as so many workers were losing their jobs. We have 15 seconds.
Right.
Your final thoughts.
It's immoral. I mean, it's just the system has gone haywire, and we should not have people making that kind of money while his own employees are going to food pantries to feed their children.
Abigail Disney and Kathleen Hughes co-produced and directed The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales. It'll be in theaters across the country on Friday. Abby's the granddaughter of Walt Disney Company co-founder Roy Disney. Here in New York, it's premiering at the opening of DCTV's Cinema for Documentary Film. And yesterday, I was at the Firehouse for the ribbon cutting. Congratulations, Abby Disney was there. You were using those scissors with John Alpert and Keiko Tsuno. It was a beautiful, beautiful event. And that film will be the first documentary to air there on Friday night, again, as well as across the country. Oh, a very happy birthday to Jackie Sam. Democracy Now! Is currently accepting applications for an associate digital editor as well as a people and culture manager. Go to democracynow.org for more information. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
WBNY Buffalo.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of 91.3 FM WBNY, the United Students Government of Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about today's program, you can give us a call at 716-878-5104.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy CNN.
This administration, I believe, unfairly is perceived as lax on border enforcement. In fact, we are sending back over 100,000 people a month and have been for the last 2 years, over 2 million people. We have to continually stress that we are, in fact, with the machinery of government about as fast as we probably can, given the current legal construct and the resources we have, sending people back at well over 100,000, either expulsion or deportation.
I mean, that is just so clear. It points to something that, you know, we talked about a little bit about this, maybe a little bit more than a little bit about this on Monday. But I want to expand this conversation because what we got trapped in is the dialogue that Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and whoever the guy is in Arizona, you know, they're trapping us into a way of looking at what's going on that's in a prism that they construct. And their prism is, you know, we got all these people coming across the border. You know, I don't care what we have to do to stop them from coming across the border, but somebody's got to stop them from coming across the border. And that's just got to be done. You know, we just can't, we can't have this going on. And then you get Ron DeSantis, you know, and Greg Abbott and other governors sending, you know, indigent people, you know, across the state to Washington, you know, state, Washington, D.C., Martha's Vineyard, you know, and so on. And so we get into whether that's a good or bad situation in terms of the policies that are being effected here. But I think that we need to see this issue larger than that. That's one of the things that people that are trying to manipulate you do is they try to constrain how you see an issue so that you see it in the prism that they want you to see it in without seeing the larger picture. So let me give you an example. Let's suppose you were having an immigration problem because you had 50,000 people a year coming across the border. And then a new president comes in and statistically 100,000 people start coming across the border in the following year. Does that mean that the new president was doing a bad job on the border? Or was there something going on that was the reason why those new 50,000 extra thousand people showed up? That is a problem that could be solved. I mean, should we be solving that problem? So if the reason why, let's suppose we take Ukraine as an example. When there was no war going on in Ukraine, You didn't see people flying out of Ukraine trying to rush into Russia. They just lived their lives in Ukraine. When Russia started to attack Ukraine, you started seeing people leaving Ukraine to go to other places, not necessarily to Russia, but to go into to other places. So now, if you're Poland and you get all of these immigrants coming out of Ukraine, you got a problem. What happens if the people who are running the government in Poland have a faction of, Ron DeSantis type people who say, I don't want to take care of these people that are coming from Ukraine. That's not my problem. I just want to take care of people that live in Poland. And you have another axis of people that are saying, well, we got these poor indigent people. We got to help these indigent people, that are coming across the border. So you have two arguments that are not focused on solving the problem. They're reacting to the problem. You got to find a way to solve the problem. So let me just tell you who we are and what we're going to be talking about today. This is L. Nathan Hare. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. And my membership in the 21st century is still valid. I looked at my visa, it says, yep, 21st century, he's in. So even though we didn't teach him anything, we didn't teach him how to use the internet, we didn't teach him how to use all of these magic cameras and things that people have, but we hired people who do know how to do these things. So we have Willie H, who does the live streaming of our program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. We are broadcasting live, of course, from the radio, WBNY, from TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. There's a lot on my mind, yo.
That's a lot to keep up with, but we're there in all those places, and we thank you because you're giving us a much larger platform, for us to be able to talk to people, and hopefully we're being of some help to people in the discussion that we're having. We're here with our producer, James Brown. Welcome, James.
Good morning, Mr. Hare.
And as we tell you all the time, what we try to do is to look at emerging facts and then try to understand what causes that particular set of facts to come to the fore. And then how do we think about those facts? And largely what we want to talk about today is how we think about these issues. So when we talk about the DHS, Department of Homeland Security Secretary, former Secretary Jeh Johnson. Jay is a funny spelled name. It's Jeh, but it's pronounced Jay Johnson. He said that this administration is being unfairly viewed, talking about the Biden administration, being unfairly viewed as lax on immigration. He says, quoting him, the administration, I believe, unfairly is perceived as lax on border enforcement. In fact, we're sending back over 100,000 people a month and have been for the past 2 years. This quote, by the way, took place, this was on September 17th. So we're not talking about something that he said some time ago. This is something that he said a couple of days ago.
Correct.
And what he's saying is that we're sending back over 100,000 people a month and have been doing so for the past 2 years of the Biden administration. Well, not quite 2 years, but, since January of 2021. So what's happening here? Why is it that we have so many people in this country who believe that the Biden administration is not doing the work that it should be doing to control the border, that there's all these people rampaging across the border and irritating people in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona, and so on? Why is that message being sprung, and repeated that way?
Yeah, tell us the true story. What's going on? What's really going on?
So the reality is, however you perceive Biden's administration, he's removing about 30 or 40% more people a month who try to migrate into the United States. He's removing 20 or 30 or 40%, I think it's 30 or 40% more people per month under the Biden administration than were being removed under the Trump administration.
Hold up. Repeat that again. What are you saying?
So what I'm saying is that the Biden administration is removing a lot more people per month from the country who had
Wow.
migrated across the border, just with more border enforcement.
See, now if I was looking at the media, I wouldn't get that. Wouldn't get that assumption. I wouldn't get those facts.
I mean, we haven't talked about this issue, but just quickly, about 80, maybe close to 85% of all of the media in this country is owned by somewhere around 10 or 12 companies.
Right.
Own all of the media in this
Right.
country. Now, if you own all of the media in the country, are you somebody making $30 an hour?
No.
No, you're probably making $30 a second, right?
Right.
So the people that make that kind of money, do they tend to be Democrats or do they tend to be Republicans?
Republicans.
I'm trying to help us understand something here.
Republicans, like
Right. See, so these people that have the fat money also tend to be Republican oriented type people because their primary interest is to be able to make money and then keep the money that they make.
Right.
What causes you to not to keep the money that you make? Well, the first thing is taxes, because it takes the taxes away before you even get the money in your bank account. They've already taken,
right.
a chunk of your income away. So you've got this struggle that always goes on between those that have and those that need to spread out the wealth that we have so that it benefits everybody, in the country. That's been the American model, but it's always been a model under stress. There's always been this tension between the people that are doing well, have gotten fat and just want to keep what they got, pass it on to their kids, not pay any taxes on it when they pass it on to their kids.
Right.
That there's always been this tension between them and those that see that the only way you can keep a country together is if you make sure that everybody has a stable baseline of life. I've talked to you guys. I know a lot of you people in our audience are much younger than I am. You don't recall and don't have parents who recall the Depression. My father was a Depression era child. He was born in 1923. The Depression began in 1929. His father was, a working class person at that time. He ended up having to leave. I think it was Bluth. I think I'm saying that word right, but the small town in Alabama, he ended up having to leave and ultimately traveled along the East Coast and wound his way into Buffalo and got a job in a steel plant. And that actually saved, his forward, life, because he now had stable income. He didn't get the kind of working opportunities he may have wanted to get, but he got a working opportunity that allowed him to be able to take care of, his 5 kids, one of whom was my father, right? And then allowed him to take care of me. Those of you that don't remember any of this, you don't get it, that there was a time when people were literally dying on the streets in America. People were sleeping on steps, on stoops, on sidewalks, outside, in the snow, in the rain, in the ice.
Right.
People dying of starvation in this country because there was no Social Security in 1929, 1930, 1931. Yes, James.
Why can't Biden just parade out Karine Jean-Pierre and no,
I got you.
no, I mean, and have a positive spin on what the president in fact is doing. In other words, roll out some of the numbers that you just said.
I absolutely agree with what you just said. I mean, what tends to happen in this country is they focus on the personalities. When Sarah Huckabee, whatever her name was,
Right.
Mike Huckabee's daughter was the press secretary. They focused on her presentation, on her clothing, and things like that, and always got you off message. You were into, well, do I defend or not defend, this or that about this lady? That's not the point. And the same thing is going on with this Karine Jean-Pierre. She announced that somewhere along the way that she was what's the word?
But sir, I'm just saying, parade her out and just release these Biden numbers.
I agree.
Hey,
they should
in
do
fact,
that. But
Biden is sending X amount of people
but
back.
I think the reason why they don't use people like Karine the right way is because they're focusing on the wrong sides of an issue. They're focusing on the issue as the Republicans created. The Republicans said the issue is that you're not enforcing Title 42. Title 42 says that you can keep somebody from coming into the country if that person cannot prove that they have been vaccinated or whatever the schedule is, on vaccination. You can keep them from coming into the country. So instead of having somebody come in, get registered as being in the country, and then getting a date, to meet with customs enforcement and all of that stuff, you wouldn't get that under Title 42. We catch you, oh, no proof, out. And, go back to Mexico, wherever you're going to go, but you got to get out of here. That Title II enforcement has become the issue for the Republicans. They're saying that you're weak, and you're inviting these people to come across the border because you're not keeping them out, because you're not enforcing Title 42. But that's the wrong issue. That's what I guess I'm trying to get us to say. Kareem will argue that, well, a court said that we had to stop using Title 42 as a reason to keep people out of the country. We couldn't do that anymore, that it was unconstitutional and so on. So now you get trapped into arguing about Title 42. Title 42 is not the problem. The problem is you have 10 to 15,000 people a month that are trying to get into the United States, that they can set up a life for themselves in the United States because they don't feel they can set up a life for themselves in the countries that they come from. That's the problem. How do we solve that problem, right? That's what I think has to be done. Now, in terms of the Biden administration's effectiveness on the border, the Republicans are just distracting you. They're not bothering to lie to you. They're just distracting you from the fact that Biden is doing more border enforcement than Trump was doing in terms of the numbers of people that he's keeping from migrating into the United States. They picked up, 100,000 people a month a year. Is it a year? Yeah, 100,000 people a year that they're keeping from crossing the border successfully. He's been able to do that with his administration. What I'm suggesting to us is that I understand that argument, but that's not the right argument. The right argument is, why do you have 100,000 people a year, or 200,000 people a year, or 5 million people a year, whatever the number is? Why do you have all of these people that don't live in the United States walking whatever number of 1,000 miles it is to get from Central America to the northern border of Mexico? That can't be an easy walk, right? Why do you have all of these people doing that? They got to be doing it for a reason, right? Well, they're telling you what the reason is. They got fires, they got hurricanes. Well, that happens to everybody. We understand that. But they got criminal cartels, they got drug dealers, they got rapists, they got no housing, they have no primary health care facilities, babies are being stillborn, and so on. They're the crushing problems, are facing these people. So it seems to me that if we want to keep people from migrating across the southern border, let's go to the places where the people are and help them where they are. Right.
And build up democracy also.
Look at how much money we're spending. We're spending 12 to 15 billion dollars a year, and we're getting nothing but more problems. We're not getting any fewer problems. We're getting more problems. My suggestion, and James, you and I, we've talked about this a number of times. I think we've pretty much, memorized the script here, that if you were to take some of the money that we spend right now in border enforcement and you use that money to set up a public works program in southern Mexico. Southern Mexico is a no man's land. There's not that many roads. There's a lot of forests, there's possibilities of forest fires and so on, mudslides, because, it's just a no man's land, in terms of the infrastructure, of that area. It's not like here where you got, highways and, 290 and 190 and transit road and all that. You don't have all that, in the southern part of Mexico. So why wouldn't you then meet with the people who run Mexico, Obrador, whatever his name is, meet with them and say, listen, we're willing to help you because this is your problem too. These people coming here are migrating through your country, and then they set up camp, in the border area around the southern part of the United States, but it's also the northern part of Mexico. And that's a problem for you, right? So go ahead. You got to.
Yeah, we got a Facebook viewer that's asking, is there a source on the Biden statistic where he's sending more people back?
Yeah, in fact, you can go to the author is Al Arshani. Her name is Sarah, Sara. Her last name is Al-Arshani. It's A-L and then Arshani. Al-Arshani. The article is entitled "Former DHS Secretary Says Biden Administration is Being Unfairly Viewed as Lax on Border. We are sending back over 100,000 people a month." That's the name of the article, right? Yeah.
Ah,
See, people, I, I, I I don't want to sound too cynical, but people take credit for things that they don't do. They just think things that happen that they like, they make it seem like they had something to do with it. So they act like, where was I trying to go with this? With uh, uh, the border enforcement, you have all of these people that are being caught,
Right.
but you're not talking about the people that don't get caught, right? Most of these people that are caught are people that turn themselves in. That's the point I was trying to make. It's not that the Customs and Border Patrol people caught, 100,000 people a month and turn them back in. What you have are 100,000 people a month who tried to cross the border, but they intended to go to a port of entry and turn themselves in. That's what they were actually doing. So it's not like you're hunting people down. The people are coming to you. You're just basically taking them in, taking their names and registering them, and and so on. If you do that, what Trump was suggesting is that, not suggesting, he was enacting, was pushing those people back across the border without any appointment for a meeting with customs enforcement, and so on. He wanted to push the problem back that way, back into Mexico, and then give Mexico a piece of money, for setting up, I guess, camps, or something, refugee camps, along the border of Mexico. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the Trump administration has been doing more of what you said. Those of you that are the anti-immigration people, you said you wanted the border to be more tightly enforced. Well, the Biden administration is more tightly enforcing the border. You have so many more people that are being caught at the border and being sent back across the border with Mexico.
But that word isn't getting out.
Right, exactly, and he's doing better than the Trump administration was doing as far as that is concerned.
So he's got to parade people out and do this, especially when we're coming into a midterm
I
election.
mean, that from a political, perspective, I suppose that's the way that it ought to be looked at. But my point is that keeps us in this argument about whether or not we're being as strong as or being too weak on enforcing the rules on people crossing the border, as if that's the problem. And what I'm trying to get us to understand is that's not the problem. That's the effect of the problem. The fact that you have all of these people running from Central America, trying to get across the border into the United States, that's the effect of another problem. What is the other problem that is causing this effect to occur? If we solve the other problem, then you won't have this effect. I'm suggesting that given the amount of money that we apparently are willing to spend, 12 to 15 billion dollars a year, why not respend that money a different way? You can take $3 or $4 billion and use that to hire 250 to 300,000 workers from this area, have them do, road repair, uh, uh, drainage ditches along the sides of roads, cut down trees, clear out brush, in the under area of the forest and so on. Do all of those things that require almost gang labor, to get it done. Use those people to do that, pay them a little bit more than minimum wage, and allow them to be, you can build housing for them. They can pay, rent. They're going to pay taxes on the income that they're going to earn for working for you. Use those tax dollars to be able to pay for more police and streets and sanitation workers, and so on.
So in a sense, though, we're also benefiting the Mexican economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to do. You want to benefit the Mexican economy. You want Mexico to have the same kind of free cultural exchange with the United States that Canada has. If you're dealing with Canada, you almost don't think of it as being a different country. It's a different country, but you don't really think about that because so much of how they move around, how they do things is identical with how we move around and do things, at least in New York State, how we move around, that we're like sister people. It's like the same family, and so on. Well, that's the relationship you want to have with Mexico because they're on the big, 1,700, 1,800 mile border, with the United States. So you want to be able to get that done. So that's what I'm suggesting that we should be doing. So when I looked at this stuff about border enforcement, what you see is that in March of 2021, this is the second month of the Biden administration, you start to see these numbers of people trying to get into the country climbing up. Well, the reason why that occurs is because people thought, well, Biden's going to be less, fascist than Trump was. So maybe we'll have a better time, trying to get in if we go to Biden. Then what happens is Biden doesn't change the Title 42 enforcement. He keeps doing the same thing that Trump was doing. He did that up until August, I think, because a lot of the people in his support base, Hispanic people particularly, said, I don't appreciate the way that you're doing this. You're not showing any more respect for the Hispanic people trying to migrate into the country than Donald Trump was. So it looked to me like Biden responded politically, to what his base was saying. So then in August, he goes back to, or he says, we're no longer going to use Title 42 as a way to keep people from crossing the border. We'll use other laws that govern immigration into this country. So when he did that, then you started seeing people who had been prevented from crossing the border or who had crossed the border 16 times and got thrown back across to the Mexican side of the border. They come back and they start trying to cross again. So the reason why you see this uptick in immigration captures along the border is because people that have already made 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 14 attempts to cross the border have just done it again, thinking they were going to be more successful, with the Biden administration. That's the reason. It's not that Biden's policies, were causing more people to migrate, from Nicaragua and whatever, Costa Rica, to get to the United States. It's that the people that have been trying to get there all the time, but they got turned around. It's just the second time, third time, it's a repeat, crossers. That's what's creating that number. And I think that's really important for people to understand. The core thing that I'm hoping I can get people to see is the issue of success should not be based on how many people you prevent from crossing the border. That should not be your measure. Your measure is how many people do you keep from trying to migrate from Central America to cross the northern border of Mexico? How does that slow down? because that's where your problem is. If you create work opportunities for
Right.
people, in Panama and Colombia and Nicaragua and Costa Rica and Ecuador and so on, you create work opportunities for those people there, they'll stay there.
Right.
Why would I come all the way to the United States if I can make a decent dollar, where I'm at home?
Well, your Facebook viewers, thank you for your information. And, yeah, they love it.
I'm telling you, this is a doable thing, and I'm hoping our Facebook listeners become the council people, become the county legislators, that they become the state senators and the state assembly people, they become the Congress people in the 23rd congressional district. So we don't have what's going on in that district right now, and they become our new senators and Congress people, and the president of the United States. I need for you all to step up. Okay, you got to step up.
Yeah.
Because if you don't make yourself available to help the rest of our people in our country, then people like Donald Trump are going to fill the vacuum. And look at the chaos these people have caused in this country.
Yeah.
I can't get over the people with these horns, on their heads, and American flags tattooed on their face, and they had bear, skin, wrapped around their shoulders and so on. What is this? This is America?
Well, what's scary to me, Mr. Hare, is that some of the churches that I know about, they're really into that Trumpism, whatever they're thinking, that mentality.
Well, Trump tries to play the card that he's a king supporter of American Christianity,
Right.
but he's not. He says those words just like Ku Klux Klan's people said that they were Christians.
Right.
Right. That
Right.
didn't make them Christians because they said they were Christians. You have to act like a Christian to be a Christian. Period. Right. I don't need to say ugly things about you.
Love your neighbor
If
as
you're a
yourself.
Christian, you would love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Right.
You wouldn't be judging your neighbor because they had yellow skin or red skin, or they had a turban on their head, or whatever. You wouldn't be judging that.
Right.
You would judge people by how they acted. Do they steal from you? Do they rob you?
Right.
Do they try to trick little girls? I mean, you look at that sort of stuff, right? I'm sorry, you got me preaching and whatnot. Listen,
Hallelujah.
we have sponsors. We have sponsors to the program, and they have a right for them to be heard. They have free speech rights too. So
we take donations too, guys.
There you go. Let's take a quick break and listen to our sponsor. We'll see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place and instead of what you came for, you found a phone number, 1-800-662-HELP? What would you do? Would you stop and give it some thought? Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. For help with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/knowtherisks.
It's easier than you think for pests to threaten your family's health. Ticks, which spread dangerous diseases, hide in tall grasses and even on your pets. Rodents easily invade your home, contaminate food, and can carry more than 35 diseases. Mosquitoes, which breed in standing water, transmit many diseases. Get the facts you need to protect your family at pestworld.org. It's that easy.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy Fox News.
It's important that whether you're a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter, I think it's important that the investigation we're doing right now happens. Because if you're a Biden supporter and you believe that nothing illegal or illegitimate happened, but then it's very important that people like me come forward and do this investigation and say, you know what, looks like you're right. Because the uninvestigated suspicion of voter fraud is toxic to this democracy.
So now this whole issue on voter fraud is, again, the same kind of thing that we're talking about in terms of the axis. What they try to do is to get you to focus on a particular instance where it looks like somebody voted illegally, right? Now, let's take an example. You have a parent that you've been living with for the last 30 years. They were older, right? So you've been living in a multi-generation family. Your parent passes away the week before an election. You got the absentee ballot sitting in front of you, on your coffee table. So you decide that you fill out the absentee ballot and you send it in yourself, right? Now, that's wrong, okay? And you should be spanked, for doing that. But there's a certain cast of people in this country who make it out that that's going on in some humongous number, in this country. And it just isn't. They had a commission working on this that was established. This was after Donald Trump's first race, in 2016. They spent almost 4 years working on this thesis that there's all these incidences of voter fraud going on. Just in the November 3rd, 2020 election alone, there were 156 million votes cast in just that one election. They had a total over 4 years, less than 4 years, they had a total of less than 1,100 instances of attempted voter fraud, and none of them were in-person voting frauds. They were cases where somebody said that they lived in Atlanta, but they got a post office box, in Decatur, Georgia. They got a case of somebody who moved, and they're in the same city, but they moved from one address to another, didn't tell the Board of Elections that they had moved, so they were voting from the wrong address. That's it. It was those kinds of instances. None of them were instances of in-person, voter fraud. And yet they make the issue about these instances of very minor things. I mean, if you were to turn that into a percentage, just divide 158 million votes, divide that number into 1,078 instances of potential, not even proven, potential voter fraud. You get a number of something like 0.000034, something like that. I mean, we're talking about, like 1/1,000,000th of a percent. That would be the number, right? It wouldn't be worth your while. The money you would spend trying to chase that 1/1,000,000th of a percent of voters is not worth the effort, because it's not going to affect, the outcome of an election.
Gotcha.
So that's the thing. I went to an article written by Michelle Leahy Lee that was entitled, Here's What Happened When a Georgia Lawmaker Scrutinized the Trump Campaign's List of Allegedly Illegal Votes. This was written in the Washington Post in December 10th of 2020. And I'm going to this thing because I want you to understand that everything that people say is the issue. What you ought to be looking at is not always the issue. Sometimes people are just giving you data, that distracts you, that sends you in the wrong direction, right? So here's what happened here. For days, Georgia State Representative B. Nguyen, I think, is that how you pronounce your name? Nguyen?
Yeah.
Reviewed a list of voters who President Trump's campaign claimed were fraudulent votes.
Right.
Nguyen poured over public records. She spoke with voters by phone. She even knocked on doors in person to vet the Trump list. And this is a list of voters that Trump's people said were attempting to commit fraud, were attempting to vote fraudulently. Representative Nguyen said that she found that it included dozens of voters who were eligible to vote in Georgia. Now, she didn't sample all of the 5 million votes. She sampled like 100 votes taken randomly from the list that Trump's people provided her. So she says that it included dozens of voters who were eligible to vote in Florida, along with their full names and addresses. when a data analyst who compiled the list told a panel of state lawmakers that it proved thousands of voters cast ballots in Georgia who should not have, and Nguyen had her data already in hand. She says, quoting her, I do want to share with you some of the things that I found that appear to be incorrect to me. She says, Matt Brainard, and you and I, James, we talked about him yesterday.
And that was a soundbite as well.
Yep, it was him on the soundbite, right? Matt Brainard, whose research has been cited in numerous lawsuits filed by Donald Trump and his allies, several of which have been tossed out by the courts. Nguyen's 10-minute dissection of the data offered a rare real-time fact check of the unsubstantiated claims of widespread voter fraud that President Trump's allies have promoted. She's quoting again. She says, if you are going to take the names of voters in the state of Georgia and publish their first, middle, and last name, their home address, and then accuse them of committing a felony, at the very minimum, there should have been an attempt on your part to contact these voters to find out if what you thought was going on actually occurred. Brainard said in an email to the Washington Post that he appreciated her feedback. He says, I look forward to getting her records that are questionable. I was happy to make a statement and happy to hear feedback and questions. So basically, he took her research and acted as if that was a part of his research and that she was helping him to vet some of the information that he had in his report. That's not what she did.
It's just the opposite.
Exactly. What she did is she said, this list has not been vetted at all. He just took, 100,000 names and said, these are, unsubstantiated votes. He didn't even look to see if the people voted or didn't vote, whether there was anything wrong with their voter registration at all. He didn't do anything. He was just lying. The episode shows how quickly the allegations by Trump and his supporters have fallen apart under scrutiny. 61 lawsuits were filed by Donald Trump in the 6 states that he felt were crossover states that he thought were going to vote for him, but they voted for Joe Biden. Out of those 61 lawsuits, he lost 60 of them. The one suit that he didn't lose was not about the votes. It was about the procedure that was used by some of the, whatever the jurisdiction was in Arizona or someplace, the procedure that they used to be able to qualify the certification of the voting list, or, the certification of the vote. Whatever the process was that they used in Arizona, apparently there was something wrong that Trump's people felt took place in that process. I don't know what that wrong thing was, but apparently it wasn't enough to prevent the certification of the vote in Arizona. The Arizona vote got certified anyway, but it wasn't about something where somebody said that they were voting who should not have voted. It wasn't like they stole somebody's ballot, and filled it out for them, and that sort of stuff. So in Georgia and elsewhere, many state Republicans have given Trump a platform. This is the problem here, to air their claims. So keep in mind, Trump loses the election on November 3rd of 2020. From November 4th of 2020 onward, right to today, Trump's people keep claiming that they were defrauded and Donald Trump should be the president, of the United States. They just continue to repeat this over and over again. They went so far as to get with your cousin Raffensperger,
That is my cousin.
the Secretary of State in Georgia,
Right.
and Governor Kemp, who was the Secretary of State when the election was taking place 4 years ago. They have gone to these people, and what did they do? They took the sentiment, not facts, just the sentiment of people who felt, I can't believe that Trump lost Georgia. They always vote for a Republican, and they wound up voting for Joe Biden. They used that as the basis to get the Georgia state legislature to change election laws in a way that would enable the governor of Georgia to decertify or not certify an election that takes place inside that state. to be able to decertify an election in a county in that state, and so on. Essentially, the apparatus where a single person could become the determiner of who wins office in elected offices around the state of Georgia. You had a thought?
All I was going to say was my niece, Sydney Powell. Well, she.
I forgot there were pictures of you and her.
That's right. That's right. At a cocktail party. And but didn't she come out way after the fact and say, "Well, of course we were, we were just fronting in a sense for the former president."
She said that?
She did say that.
She
Right.
did.
Right.
Wow.
And the way she said it was, didn't everybody already know that?
What she said was, why would you have even listened to me when you know that I don't have any sense, that nothing that I'm saying makes any sense? You knew that it was crazy when you heard me say it in the first place. So why would you even bother to listen to me? That was her defense, that she was nutty,
Especially, didn't the Supreme Court throw out like 90% of those, or at least decided against the Trump administration?
So out of 61 lawsuits, they lost 60 of them, right? But that didn't prevent the legislature in Georgia, which is controlled by Republicans, it didn't prevent them from mounting all of these new election laws, like saying that you can't have drop boxes, or you can only have one drop box for the entire state. For the entire state of Georgia, which has, if I'm not mistaken, 68 or so counties, in the entire state of Georgia, you can only have one drop box. So if you couldn't get to a mailbox, you could normally put your vote, your voter ballot, you could put it into the drop box. But they knocked that down to just one for the entire state. They changed the rules on how early you can vote, when you can have in-person early voting, and so on. And they did all of these things on the basis of voter integrity, because we're concerned, that there was voter fraud, in this race, and here's an opportunity where a voter fraud, could have occurred. So we're going to do things to correct those weaknesses, in the system. But they made this all up on the basis of something that was a lie. There was no voter fraud in Georgia in the first place. So spending the next 2 years after 2020 creating laws to control things that didn't need to be controlled because there was nothing wrong with the operation of those things in the first place shows you that this was just a cunning way for them to use, the suspicions that they created, right, as a justification for them to suppress the votes of certain populations. If we talked on Monday, 350,000 registrations were tossed aside in the state of Georgia alone. People who had registered to vote. Now, this is a state that maybe 5 or 6 million people vote in a statewide election. 350,000 votes in out of 5 million. Now you're up in the area, of 2 or 3% of the vote. Now, in the United States, 2 or 3% can be a landslide, right? I mean, Biden won by something like 52 or 53% of the national vote. Trump lost, at 47, maybe a little bit closer to 48% of the vote. A 2% swing in the vote would have put Trump in office, and Biden would never have been there at all. So this is not something to ignore, right? When these people are doing these insidious things to take people's names off the ballot, to deny people the right to vote. Ron DeSantis, I mean, I don't know. I wanted to have a program, to be honest with you, today. I just couldn't get enough research that I could count on as to the legality of what Ron DeSantis was doing. Now, everybody's trying to make an issue out of him spending state money to send people from Texas to Florida, and then from Florida to Martha's Vineyard, and then whatever is going to happen after that. They're making that the issue. But that doesn't sound quite like the right issue to me. These people were not they didn't migrate into Florida in the first place. These were people that migrated into Texas. Ron DeSantis sent people to Texas. They identified 50 people or 48 people and told them, gave them brochures. You know, if you come to Martha's Vineyard, you know, you can get a job, you can get a house, you can get health care, we'll treat you nice, you know, we'll help your kids learn English, you'll be cool. And so they took a plane from Texas to Florida, but these were not Florida citizens. These were not migrants into Florida. They were people that migrated into Texas. What did Ron DeSantis have to do with these people in the first place? And he spent his state money on this and then sends them to Martha's Vineyard, doesn't actually take them to Martha's Vineyard. He takes them to the airport, to a parking lot near the airport, and he drops them off there and gives them brochures and say, here's where the Martha's Vineyard is, find your way. And just left these people there. It seems to me that if that's not illegal, somebody should write a law to make that illegal. That's just my thought. But we have a caller hanging on, and we got that caller real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Listening to the program, and it brings back memories to me. When I was a young man looking at Superman, and they talked about truth, justice, and the American
way.
And the American way. Not that truth and justice were the American way. Truth, justice, and the American way.
just in case you got confused, truth and justice is one thing.
It's all separate.
And the American way is something else.
All separate.
And the American way is winning by any means necessary.
By any means necessary.
Wow.
That's right.
Or crook, win is the thing by any means necessary.
Well, don't get mad. Malcolm X used to say that too. Yeah. By any means necessary.
Well, growing up in the hood.
By hook or by crook. He was talking about freedom by any means necessary. But just so you know, this makes me think about the American way. It's all about winning. It's not about being right. It's not about doing the right thing.
Yep.
It's about being on the winning side.
Yep. And getting your message out. You know, people keep talking about him like he's some sort of strong, you know, heroic type person and whatnot.
Actually, wasn't Malcolm X talking about people defending themselves by any means necessary? In other words, if somebody is attacked,
that was the context in which he said that. But he did say those words. We just figured we'd use that for a little comedy. Thanks, brother.
Thanks
we'll
for calling.
Thank you.
Excellent. And so in Georgia, as elsewhere, many Republicans have given Trump a platform to air their claims, to recycle conspiracy theories and unsubstantiated allegations. The president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Now, I got to tell you now, when 9/11 happened and Giuliani was walking through the smoke, you know, and acting like he was the guy, you know, he's got, you know, Couric, the police commissioner with him, and the governor of the state was with him, and they're taking these pictures of him, you know, walking with the smoke, you know, of the World Trade Center, you know, the building falling behind him, and he looked like he was coming out of a war zone, you know, and so on.
Well, he was.
And he was, you know, he was the guy. All he did was took a picture. Okay, he didn't do any work. It wasn't like he wasn't any. He didn't go into the smoke.
Wasn't he the mayor at the time?
He was the mayor, but he didn't go into the smoke. He wasn't getting anybody out of a.
But he's an administrator. Do you really want the administrator to go into the smoke?
All I'm saying is that you're taking credit for something as if you were. You take a photograph, you know, with the smoke behind you and so on, and you looking like you're a part of the show when you weren't a part of the show. I just want to put one more post note on this thing. This cousin, Rudy Giuliani,
yes, sir.
Cousin Rudy Giuliani, that cousin is the same cousin that put the Emergency Services Administration for New York City. He put that back into the World Trade Center when it was rebuilt after Tim McVeigh and whatever animals, or excuse me, whatever kinds of critters he was involved with, you know, that blew up the basement, you know, the lower parking lot area of the World Trade Center, which caused a portion of the building floor to collapse, and humongous damage and deaths, you know, as a result of what he did. You would think that you would not put the thing that you needed to keep intact most, which is your emergency services apparatus for your city, you wouldn't put it in the place that you know had already been attacked once before, obviously the World Trade Center was an object in somebody's eye, you know, that if I'm going to do a bad thing, let me do it there because I'll get a lot more credit if I do it there. I'll become famous and so on, right? So you don't put it there. You put it someplace underground, you know, where there's like one sheep, you know, that comes around every once in a while and so on. You know, you gotta go through a 600-foot tunnel, you know, to get to a door to go underground. And you put it someplace where it's not going to get hurt, so that it's there to respond to the emergency. I mean, the reality is emergencies can occur. I would never have thought that 9/11 would have occurred. I was in my car on my way to Rochester, and I hear the people on the radio saying that there's a plane flying, you know, into, or not flying into, had flown into the World Trade Center.
First plane, yeah.
So I got off at, I think it was the, whatever the station is after the Clarence station, near Batavia. I got off at the service station there and went and looked at TV to see what was going on. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. You know, somebody actually flew a plane into the World Trade Center. And while I was doing that, another plane showed up while I was watching and hit the other tower, right? And then I hear that somebody was flying across Pennsylvania, heading towards Washington, D.C. Somebody did hit the Pentagon, you know, and so on. I mean, these are things that were just unimaginable to me until this occurred. Now, even though it's still unimaginable, but at least I do know now that you have to prepare for something like this. So preparation means that you put resources together in some place that they won't get hurt, so that you've got the ability to fight back whenever an incident like this, you know, occurs.
Right. That second plane probably shouldn't happen. And also, I learned later that they were warned that the planes was going to come. I was warned. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I can't, you know, say yes or no, you know, on that. But Giuliani called out several, this is one of my other issues with him. He calls out several Black election workers in Fulton County and alleges that they were passing around in USB ports, in his words, as if they were vials of heroin or cocaine. Why would you, even if you thought they were doing something illegal, passing around zip drives, even if that's what you thought was occurring, why would you connect that to heroin and cocaine? Because they're Black? Of course that's why he did it, because they were Black. He also referred to some election workers by name while questioning their actions, despite repeated pleas from state election officials to protect the safety of election workers. Giving oxygen to this continued disinformation is leading to a continuing erosion of people's belief in our elections and our processes. This is what I want you to understand. The November 3rd, 2020 election was the best run election ever in the history of the United States. But you get these Republican type people, these MAGA type people, and they keep repeating that something is wrong when there's no evidence that there was anything wrong at all. All the evidence shows that everything was right, you know, in this election. But they've been successful in repeating this message over and over and over again that there was something suspect, that now you've got half the population in this country suspecting that most elections are fraudulent. You know, that people are basically, you know, manipulating their votes. When they go to exercise their vote, it's not their vote. They've got a algorithm that decides, you know, who gets to be the council person or the dog catcher or the county clerk, you know, and so on, right? So the legal challenges just have not abated. The Republican National Committee filed a lawsuit this week that some poll watchers could not observe the vote counting as closely in person as they had hoped, and challenging the use of ballot drop boxes, which were installed at the direction of election officials in Georgia. Now, the reason why these ballot drop boxes were expanded, they've always had them. In fact, the place where you put your ballots at a board of elections, a place, an election place, that polling place, that box that's there is the same box that you use for a drop box, you know, for a ballot box. It's the same thing. It's created under the same law. In fact, they don't even have a distinct name from one or the other. the drop box that's inside your polling place is the same drop box that's outside your polling place that's secured. It's got locks on it. It's a secure box. There used to be a drop box for every polling place. The Republicans wiped this out, at least in Georgia, where now you only have one drop box for the entire state. Who's being harmed by that?
That would seem ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. In another lawsuit,
I mean, in a sense, if you think about it, you have one for a county, would seem to be ridiculous.
Exactly. I mean, there are something like 730 something polling places in the state of Louisiana. They reduced that down to less than 30 polling places for the entire state, all on the basis of so-called voter integrity. They're not talking about voter integrity. They're talking about voter suppression. That's what this is really all about. In another lawsuit filed in recent days, Trump campaign and Georgia Republican Party chairperson David Schaefer alleged systematic irregularities and requested that the court decertify the election in his state and prevent the state's electors from casting their votes for Donald or having their votes cast for Donald Trump. Just insanely stupid stuff, right? The Trump campaign mounted a 1,585-page lawsuit relying heavily on the data analysis by this Brainard fellow, who we've already seen from Nguyen's research, that he didn't actually do any research. He just made a list up, of registered voters and claimed that they were unsubstantiated or that they were fraudulent votes. He says when just combining his findings alone, the number of ballots are strongly indicated as illegally cast surpasses the margin of victory in the presidential election. That's what Brainerd said when he was testifying. He said the list showed that voters who used a post office address to mask their true residences and others voted in 2 states. But Nguyen found in her analysis that the first 10 names on the list were alleged as out of state voters. She found that 8 were longtime Georgia residents and property owners who were using public records, and dozens of voters who the campaign suggested use PO boxes to vote illegally were actually residents of a single condominium building that had only one address, right? And that had a mail center on the first floor that included both Republicans and Democrats. Just trying to show you that people are using scurrilous means to sow doubt. That's what they're trying to do. They're sowing doubt in the minds of the public so that you are less confident and then less likely to cast your vote. And the criminals who are trying to steal the election, those people will vote 100%. Thank you all for supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all on Friday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. See you all then.
WBNY Buffalo.
Windows tinted.